Let's define diversity. We got our hands somewhat around culture. How do we define diversity? Not a rhetorical question. Someone said different. Any other thoughts? Multiplicity. So difference, multiplicity. What else? Blending. Okay? Any other thoughts? Yes?
It's a composite. It's a conglomeration of different, whether it's your gender or your thought. You may have a difference of thought, but we may agree to disagree on it.
Okay.
So
Very
I see
good.
it as a composition.
You have half the definition. We did well with half of it, which is understanding that diversity to some extent means difference. It means variation. The key thing that we forget most often is that diversity is the real or perceived differences. They may be real, they may be perceived. And sometimes the tricky thing is that parts of the elements that make people different are visible, some of them are invisible. So we may perceive two people to be not diverse when in fact they are. And by making that assumption, we can arrive at all kinds of erroneous conclusions. Or we can look at two people and assume they're very different, and yet, when we get to know them, we find out. You look at someone, and they look black to you. And you look at somebody else, and they look white. Okay? You just go down the aisle in the store. We might symbolically make a distinction and say, these are two very different people. And we might assume other things about how a black person might live their lives, or how they might dress, or talk, or what they might eat, versus the white person. But what if we find out they're actually neither? They're both Latinos. Their native language is Spanish, they come from Puerto Rico, and they have more similarities than we might ever think by just looking at them. Okay? So, please include the concept of real versus perceived differences. Real versus perceived when you think, I'm not here to impose my personal agenda. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to hopefully give you one or two tools which you can apply in your personal and your professional lives to improve the quality of your life. Because when we become more aware, we improve the quality of our life. Sometimes we think about diversity and we think about people, particularly when we're judging a book by its cover, and we think in terms of minorities, racial minorities or sex minorities or whatever. Can someone define to me what a minority is? Because we need to unslough that term as well. What is a minority?
Smaller portion.
Okay, so in a mathematical sense, a minority would be smaller than you would compare to a majority. Minority versus majority. Okay. Anything else?
Power. Less power.
Power. Okay, that's an interesting one. What do you mean?
Well,
Oh, you didn't
I mean,
that
well,
coming, did you?
like South Africa during apartheid,
Very
there
good.
were more black people than white, but they
Okay.
were the minority when it came to power.
For the sake of saving time, I'm going to take those two comments because that's exactly what I'm looking for. Did you know that there are more women than men in the United States of America?
Yeah.
interesting thing though. Traditionally, historically, and even today, aren't women considered to be a minority? Effectively, women earn 75 cents to $1. Jobs are still segregated. Women have to worry about glass ceilings. Right? What is the difference? The difference is that a minority is not always, in fact, is often not a mathematical minority. The key is power. And to get technical, we call that, as a characteristic of minority, we call it power differential. Okay? Power differential means that the dominant group, whether they are the majority or the minority mathematically, the dominant group possesses access to resources, access to wealth, access to education, access to the judicial system, access to employment, and so on and so forth. And so they influence the system in which they live in ways that it perpetuates their belief system. And by default, the non-dominant group then becomes the underdog, even if mathematically they are the majority. Are we clear on that? It's important to understand that. I'm going to finish this little section with talking on number 3, by the way, now. Understanding compliance versus awareness. The reason why when I do these trainings and when I teach at school, and I teach cultural diversity in organizations. I don't teach it as part of a, humanities. No, I teach it in the School of Management. It's a business curriculum. But I don't speak about the ESC. I don't talk about Title 7 or the ADA or any of that stuff. Or, well, don't take that back. I talk about it, but it's one chapter in the text out of 18 chapters. Okay? Why? Because compliance is not enough. Compliance is external. If you look at yourselves as a circle, compliance is external. It's something we have to do because there's a law that says we have to do it. Not because we want to do it, but because we have the natural inclination or the learned skills to understand why we should do something. We do it because Title 7 says we have to. It's external motivation, and there's a room full of counselors as far as I know. I think we understand and we know the value between external motivation and internal motivation. Okay? So compliance, at best, is going to lead to tolerance and nothing more. That's it. We're going to get to the point where we will tolerate things because we have to. Okay? But when we become aware of the value of each individual as a member of humankind, when we become aware that we relate to everyone that we interact with, and that they are a human being. They do have a soul. They have a spirit. They have feelings and emotions. They too have a life experience. When we learn to respect that and be aware of that, we become sensitive. And there's a difference between tolerance and sensitivity. And when you become sensitive, you become internally motivated. Your eyes are now open. You can see things for what they are. You may not subscribe to them necessarily, we're going to talk about it here in a second, but you will accept them and you will recognize their value. They may not have value to you, but they have value to someone else.